promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Bamako, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. First, the major trending stories. Mauritanian President El Ghazouani urges regional and international support to stabilize the Sahel region amid ranging challenges.
Today,
it is undeniable that the Sahel as a whole and the G5 countries in particular are facing security, socio-economic and ecological crises that are no match for their own resilience.
The United Nations Refugee Agency condemns the expulsion of Burkinabe refugees from Ghana. And the ECOWAS Elders Forum arrives in Liberia ahead of the 2023 general elections to evaluate the country's level of preparedness. And Ghana's National Assembly adopts a bill authorizing the cultivation of cannabis for industrial and medicinal purposes.
This is a winner for Ghana because what we are looking at is tens of thousands of direct jobs and indirect jobs all across Ghana.
Stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us. The call to mobilize resources in safeguarding the Sahel region crowned the discussions at the 4th General Assembly of the Sahel Alliance held in Nouakchott, the Mauritanian capital. More than 120 representatives of the alliance and their partners took part in the event attended by the President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, who doubles as chairperson of the G5 Sahel. In his address, Mohammed Sheikh Ould El Ghazouani called for a synergy of efforts to combat the security crisis in the Sahel.
Today, it is undeniable that the Sahel as a whole and the G5 countries in particular are facing security, socio-economic and ecological crises that are no match for their own resilience. These crises, exacerbated by a particularly difficult international situation, feed and amplify each other in a dramatic, vicious circle. And we can only hope to break this circle by pooling our efforts, adopting a holistic approach, and putting in place a strong collective response backed by active solidarity on the part of the international community.
President Mohammed Sheikh Ould El Ghazouani of Mauritania speaking there. Meanwhile, the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, joins the list of other international and humanitarian organizations to react to reports of Ghana's expulsion of Burkinabe refugees. The agency, in a statement Wednesday, said it was concerned that hundreds of people, especially women who had fled a deadly insurgency in neighboring Burkina Faso, were being deported. The Sahelian country is fighting armed groups that first made a presence in northern Mali in 2013 and have seized territories across the region. Since then, thousands of people have been killed and millions displaced, with many seeking refuge in safer regions of Burkina Faso and in neighboring countries, including Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. Social media users have similarly expressed worry after one Alhaji Gbamgbanku shared a video online of dozens of women holding their children sitting on the ground in a parking lot with buses. Ahead of Liberia's 2023 elections, the head of the ECOWAS Elder Forum, Goodluck Jonathan, has described public confidence in the electoral management body and state security as good recipes for a peaceful ballot. The two institutions, he reiterated, are key in attracting citizens' support and participation. From Monrovia, Darlington Popper reports.
The ECOWAS Leader Forum paid a courtesy visit to the border commissioners of the National Elections Commission on Wednesday. Leading the delegation, the former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan called on the Elections Commission to ensure the smooth conduct of the October 10 elections. He said once the process is credible, the electorates participating will appreciate the Commission for its transparency.
If citizens have confidence in the electoral management body and have confidence in the security, then they are sure that at the end of the election, whatever the result, we will accept. But people will doubt the neutrality of the electoral management body and the security, then they always have hot stones on their palms.
For her part, the chairperson of the Commission, David Etta Brandlasana, assures all institutions' readiness to conduct the 2023 elections.
We also say to you that we are conducting nomination processes currently, some 2 to 3 days left for that to be ended. So generally we say we are on course, though you have outlined some areas which we could also address, but we are prepared. As you mentioned, we have issues with finances, but we continue to work with the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning.
As the elections draw closer, regional organizations have begun arriving in the country to evaluate the level of preparedness instituted by the government to ensure a successful elections. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Darlington Pogba in Monrovia.
Well, we're from Liberia. President Bola Tinubu has asked the Green Chamber of the National Assembly to amend the 2022 Supplementary Appropriations Act to fund palliative measures against the impact of fuel subsidy removal. The request, convened in a letter read by the Speaker of the House, Tajuddin Abbas, during plenary, seeks 500 billion naira or $650 million to activate the government's plan. WADR's Usman Umar in Abuja completes the story.
President Tinubu is seeking to extract 500 billion naira or $650 million from over 819.5 billion naira supplementary budget submitted in 2022 for capital projects due to the impact of floods on farmlands and road infrastructure. In the letter, President Tinubu said, and I quote, "I hope the House will consider this request expeditiously." End of quote. The supplementary budget was submitted by former President Muhammadu Buhari. Concerned, like many others, Taidi John, an economist, speaks on the implication of Tinubu's request on the economy.
As to what people are saying is that the cost of their transport has increased, a number of things has increased that they did not envisage. So, but if government will help reduce the impact of the subsidy removal, the pains, especially the poor that are likely affected, will to a large extent reduce.
A cross-section of Nigerians have also reacted to the development, especially as the need for palliatives trailed the subsidy removal in June.
For me, as a citizen, the idea of palliative is very, very genuine. But my own idea of palliative is they should share the money. Nigerians will know how to handle themselves, what is important to them.
Since the subsidy removal by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the price of petrol jumped threefold across the country, an economic crisis that forced the Nigerian Labour Congress (NLC) and the Trade Union Congress (TUC) to threaten a nationwide strike to protest the decision. They, however, suspended the action following a parley between them and the government, with some agreements reached. Despite the proposed palliatives, concerns about the impact of the removal and its multiplier effect on almost every sector of the country's economy and households remain. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Well, I am aware that Ghana has adopted a bill to legalize the cultivation of cannabis for medicinal purposes, while in Côte d'Ivoire, authorities are instituting measures to curtail further material damage and loss of lives from floods and landslides. All of these and more coming your way on Newslink.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Ghana's parliament Wednesday passed the controversial Narcotics Control Commission Amendment Bill 2023, primarily authorizing the cultivation of industrial and medicinal cannabis. In 2020, some countries in Africa, through their national legislations, decided to permit the cultivation and export of cannabis for medicinal and scientific purposes, with some other countries authorizing the use of cannabis for medical purposes. As WADR's Ati Mbila Laws in Accra reports, the Hemp Association of Ghana welcomes the passage of the bill.
The amended bill means that the Interior Ministry has the authority to issue a license for the cultivation of cannabis, which has no more than 0.3% utility content on dry weight spaces for industrial or medicinal purposes. Here is an excerpt of what transpired in the House as the bill was finally given the green light by the Speaker, Alban Bagbin.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against say no.
The ayes have it. The motion is carried. The Narcotics Control Commission Amendment Bill 2023 is deemed read the third time and passed.
Reacting to the news, President of the Hemp Association of Ghana, Nana Kweku-Agyeman, says the bill will go a long way to create jobs for the teeming unemployed youth and also improve the nation's economic fortunes.
This is a winner for Ghana because what we are looking at is tens of thousands of direct jobs and indirect jobs all across Ghana. That's the first thing. It's also great for the economy because now the government of Ghana can have something whereby they will generate revenue internally, and that's from the taxes.
The bill is now expected to be assented to by President Nana Akufo-Addo, making it law. Reporting for Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Atiewin in Bila Lawson in Accra.
In the province of Twi, in the west of Burkina Faso, the 2023-2024 agricultural season is off to a difficult start due to the lack of rain. While some seedlings have already emerged, others have just been planted, even though it's now July. Growers are therefore fearing crop failure, even if the Ministry of Agriculture is reassuring them that they can still catch up. More details in this report by Matisi.
With his family, farmer Jacques Numu sows millet and maize on a 5-hectare plot just outside the village of Boni. The dust kicked up by each blow of the daba on the prepared soil testifies to the scarcity of rain in the area. At this time of year, he should still be fertilizing and weeding.
It's not raining well here. You can see for yourself that the soil is dry and we haven't had any rain for several days. Some people have been able to sow and it's starting to grow. But here we are late and I am afraid this season is not going to be very good for us.
The last rain was over a week ago, preventing this farmer from completing his planting. His fears are shared by Sawadi Sinkondo, another local farmer. Standing at the edge of his 15-hectare cotton field, the 50-year-old observes the seedlings, which are at their emergence stage but lacking water.
Look for yourself. If the rain had continued as it had started, we would be happy, but we are really behind schedule. Normally, we would be applying fertilizer, but because of the lack of rain, we cannot yet.
Some growers are even discouraged by the delay of around a month, but the 2 Provincial Directorate of Agriculture is reassuring. According to the Provincial Director, Gassi Luge, the agricultural season can still be made up if the rains resume in the coming days.
It looks like the season is getting off to a rocky start, but we can't worry at this stage, even if it is alarming. For non-food crops, we can say that we are worried, but for food crops, there is nothing to worry about because there are specific varieties that can still be introduced.
The provincial director also points out that the 2 provinces had an 80% planting rate by the end of June. Food seeds, such as millet and maize, account for more than half of the area planted. Like last year, the Burkinabe authorities are expecting cereal production to reach 5 million tons this agricultural season.
Matisi reporting there. You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Mauritanian President El Ghazouani urges regional and international support to stabilize the Sahel region amid ranging challenges. The ECOWAS Elders Forum arrived in Liberia ahead of the 2023 general elections to evaluate the country's level of preparedness. Ghana's National Assembly adopts a bill authorizing the cultivation of cannabis for industrial and medicinal purposes. Ahead in the news, a migration expert discusses new emerging push factors responsible for the surging number of irregular migrants from West Africa. We also have press review and sports updates. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Remember, we're streaming live on WADR.org and live on YouTube on WADR News. More on weather-related story. At least 30 people have died from floods and landslides in Côte d'Ivoire since the start of rain in early April. The Ivorian government spokesman Amadou Coulibaly said the situation reflects the very intense rainy season being experienced in the country. Imo Edet has more.
The heavy rains that have been falling since April 2023, according to Coulibaly, have caused loss of life and significant material damage. He told the Council of Ministers on Wednesday that as of July 10, authorities have recorded 30 deaths, including 22 in Abidjan, the economic hub particularly affected by intense episodes of rains. Faced with this alarming situation, the government assured to strengthen the pre-positioning of relief in risk areas and continue with the removal of informal housing and structures on waterways. Precarious constructions in flood-prone areas inhabited by poor populations add to the problem in the ever-growing metropolis. Amadou Coulibaly speaks on additional measures.
Au regard de cette situation alarmante,
in view of this alarming situation, the Council decided to adopt the following measures: reinforcing the pre-positioning of emergency services in high risk, the intensification of awareness raising with the involvement of local authorities, elected representatives and community leaders. In particular, we are supporting the Grand Bassam Town Council in its effort to take charge of the people affected and the construction work to be carried out, as well as consolidating the budget of the operational players in charge of managing the adverse effects of rain.
The months of June and July are at the heart of the rainy season in Côte d'Ivoire, with a tropical climate of 300 millimeters of precipitation recorded on average in June alone. Torrential rains followed by devastating floods are recurrent in the largest Ivorian city, which has nearly 6 million inhabitants. Last year, 19 people died during several episodes of heavy rainfall.
Imo Edet reporting there.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
It's a beautiful Thursday and the weekend is about to start. But for newsmakers, Thursday only gets better after a beehive of activities. For instance, Ghana's National Assembly yesterday passed a bill to legalize or authorize the cultivation of cannabis for industrial and medicinal purposes, a move welcomed by many. Well, what other headlines and stories are trending in daily publications across Ghana? Twimbila Lawson takes it from here.
Let's start with a review by looking at the headlines in the Daily Graphic newspaper. The screaming headline says, ECOWAS okays a JAPA deal, and there's a picture there of a smiling Attorney General Godfred Yeboah Dame. Some banner headlines: 422 busted for illegal digital lending, and also turning prisons into factories. Prisoners and officers train in entrepreneurship. Finally, Parliament legalizes weed cultivation for medicinal use, and Kolebu teens performs first kidney transplant. So those are the headlines in the Daily Graphic newspaper. Let's go to the Ghanaian Times newspaper. The screaming headline: War on illegal digital lending platforms. 422 operators grabbed in swoop, then alleged to be distributing clients' data and issuing death threats, and 654 mobile phones, 22 laptop computers, and 800 SIM cards were retrieved during that swoop. Then some banner headlines: 17 defunct state-owned enterprises to be disposed of, according to the minister, and then Damongo, best tourist destination in northern Ghana, according to the Lands Minister Jinapo, and then Attorney General's 92 official vehicles not insured. That's according to the Chief Director for the Public Accounts Committee. And finally, a Kolebu Teaching Hospital medical team performs life-saving kidney transplant. So those are the headlines in the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Let's bring you the headlines in the Business Finder newspaper. The screaming headline: 17 defunct government entities to be sold, liquidation, listing on Ghana Stock Exchange, strategic investments also planned for the rest. Then we have a banner headline, Damongo Best Tourist Destination. Those are essentially the headlines on the Business Finder newspaper. From there, we go to the Chronicle newspaper. The screaming headline, Dampare is not going anywhere, Interior Minister tells Parliament. Then the banner headline, Damongo tourist potential sold in Parliament and government to restructure public enterprises. And then finally, Ghana Mining Expo opens in Takoradi today. So those are the headlines in the Chronicle newspaper. We will end with the Business Analyst newspaper. The screaming headline, June inflation shoots up marginally to 42.5%. Western North region records highest inflation of 61%, and Greater Accra region records lowest inflation of 30%. Interesting there. Then banner headline here, Parliament passes narcotics control bill granting licenses for cannabis cultivation. And then another banner headline, Food and Drugs Authority cautions public against 3 unregistered products. Agrochemicals in farm produce affecting export business. And I persuaded the World Bank to inject $200 million into Tree Corp Vision. That's according to Efriye Akoto. And it's possible that he's making this comment because he's vying to be the presidential candidate for the governing New Patriotic Party. And so those are the headlines in the major dailies today. Back to you in the studio.
Many thanks, Tim Lawson, for the press review.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is The Guest.
This segment today brings in a migration campaigner who has for more than a decade led advocacy to discourage irregular migration, a trend that is witnessing as such, especially among youths in countries such as the Gambia, Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, Sierra Leone, and Nigeria. Beginning this week, reports emerged about the cumulative number of hundreds of irregular migrants from the Gambia and Senegal who have feared missing on the Mediterranean in their attempt to reach the Canary Island. The Senegalese government in a statement Wednesday denied these reports, describing them as baseless. But there are concerns that despite the campaigns, there is as such irregular migration, especially post-COVID-19. In this chat, Mohammed Amani responds first to a question on the new emerging push factors beyond the traditional drivers such as insecurity, poverty, and cultural elements, as well as peer pressure.
I think Gambia still has a huge number of youth migrating in search of a greener pasture. Like you said, the push factor here before everybody says is bad leadership, democracy and human rights. But now in the Gambia, we're seeing more of like climate change issues. Because if you look at most of the Gambian youth who are leaving from communities that are not known for migrating. Before migration has like regions are affected by migration, like for example, the Upper River region of the Gambia, because there's an area where little social amenities are available. People don't have any hope. But now those that are even having the ozone, those that are having access to tourism, those that are having access to gardens are the very people who are leaving. So this is because there's a climate change. For example, in Khartoum, Gunjur and Sanya, 200 youths are still missing. They are still missing because most of them are fishermen and those also who are engaged in tourism, but they have to leave their business because their business have been destroyed by climate change, which is even due to human actions. And one of the actions could be the fish meal factory and overfishing.
There is this argument that the social media is playing a huge role, but it kind of has this subtle effect on young people.
Social media has a great role to play. And in fact, it is among the leading that is really motivating people. For example, you see a very young person who lives within 1 month and he will be standing like very close to a Ferrari or very close to an expensive vehicle, take a picture, post it on Instagram or Twitter or post it on Facebook. He's trying to encourage other people to take the same journey. Instead of telling them the reality, he's trying to give them a fake impression that you can have everything in Europe, especially knowing very well that countries like Germany are deporting a lot of Gambians or they are deporting a lot of Africans. So social media have played a very good, and they have been playing a role. It's not only today, but they have been very instrumental because you hardly hear a real story about migration on Facebook. All the stories that you hear is like people taking pictures of a Ferrari or taking pictures of the park, but you'll never see them taking pictures of their houses or their accommodations. And this makes it very difficult for migration activists to convince the people who almost lose hope in their country.
Social media has been instrumental in attracting young people. Why not do the reverse approach by using the same social media to campaign against irregular migration? Do you think the fight has been effective? The campaigns have been effective?
The campaign have not been effective, to be honest, because we are talking to people who already lose hope. We are talking to people who are already depressed. We are talking to people who have already got this in their mind that they cannot make it in the country. For example, if you talk to so many people, if I go for an outreach talking to youths, what they say to me is scary. Okay, the Europeans came to Africa to take everything that we have. And in fact, they are plundering our ozone. They are taking all our fish. And now you are telling me not to go to their country. Because what they keep saying is, how many money do you spend on visa? Because visa fees are not refundable. And imagine for a Gambian, most of them have to go to Senegal. How many do you spend to go to Senegal? And most of the time, you are not given a visa even with all the requirements. So this point really it touches up an extent that you have to think which way to use. Well, there is a human right which says that we can travel, like freedom of traveling, which should be guaranteed. But again, it is limited, basically, due to race or color or where we come from. So now we're trying to convince them to stay back home means that activists have to go back to drawing board. Because the only way that we can keep them home is also to promote human rights and democracy in our country and to advise government to protect what they have.
Migration is a good thing, only when it's done right. People should have the opportunity to travel, to explore, to see new places, meet new people, build new relationships. But one of the things I guess you have advocated for is that there is review of migration policies done by respective governments.
Exactly. I think what Africa needs to do is to review the migration policy. Diplomacy and international relations is two ways. You don't give it all, but you expect something in return. For example, the Gambia and Senegal can also screw at least a bit European countries because Europe needs us very much, especially our marine resources. So now what Europe always try to defend is that if you don't accept a deportation or if you don't accept to stop your people from coming here, we are going to cut our financial support. And we all know Africa is still dependent on these European people, especially European EU money. So they get scared not to accept their demands. But can't we also say, okay, deport our people and leave our fish for them to feed us? These are things that Africa should focus more on. Right now, there is an energy crisis. Europe needs Africa. For example, Senegal. Everybody's rushing to Senegal because Senegal have energy. Can they also use that tool to hold them? But it's sad. But the reality is sometimes most of the people who usually discuss these migration issues, they don't care. Because if right now Europe is putting a lot of visa ban on nations. For example, the Gambia now, if you apply for EU Schengen visa, which is usually 3 months, now they are giving people 1 week, 2 weeks. And this is only few people that are having access to this.
That was Mohamed Mane, a migration campaigner. And in the world of sports, a group representing amateur clubs in Cameroon has called in legendary former player Samuel Eto'o to resign from his post as president of the country's football federation, citing grave irregularities in the organization. Last week, Cameroon's Amateur Club Association, ACFAC, voted 11-1 in favor of asking the four-time African Footballer of the Year to stand down. It is said that the 42-year-old who played for several of Europe's top clubs should resign if he still loves Cameroonian football, as he has always claimed. Elsewhere, defending female Tunisian champion Elena Rybakina lost in Wimbledon in the quarterfinals as Ons Jabeur avenged her defeat in last year's final. Sixth seed, Jabeur came from a set down in win 6-7, 5-7, 6-4, 6-1 in reverse after match 12 months ago. The Tunisian clinched the second set with a timely break of serve at 5-4 and then dominated the decider. Jabeur will play Arina Sabalenka in the semi-finals on Thursday. That is today, after she powered past Madison Keys. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to our listeners in the Gambia via Hot 104.3 FM Banjul and in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 90.9 FM, Lofa County. Inyas Bilimo has been on the console and Mustafa Sek on the social media platform. And I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
Talk, music,
Get it all 24 hours on West Africa Democracy Radio.